cold wind moved through the broken colony, whistling between ruined metal walls and the empty streets. Daniel sat in his small wooden cabin at the edge of the wasteland, warming his hands over the little fire he had built. His farm was poor. The soil gave little, but it was enough to keep him alive. He had boiled a pot of stew with old vegetables and a piece of bread on the side. It was not much, but it smelled warm, and in a place where hunger lived in every corner, that smell was like treasure. He lifted the spoon slowly, ready to eat, when a faint knock echoed at the door. He froze. Few people came here. A second knock followed, weak, almost like scratching. Daniel put down his spoon and walked to the door carefully. When he pulled it open, the sight froze his breath. Two small alien girls stood in the snow, trembling. Their skin was pale, lips purple from cold, and their big eyes looked hollow, empty from starvation. They wore rags that barely covered their thin frames. One girl held the other's hand tightly, as if afraid she would fall if she let go. The taller one opened her mouth, but her voice cracked. "Please? Food?" Daniel looked at them, unsure. He had only one pot of stew, enough for himself, maybe a little for tomorrow. Sharing it meant he would go hungry later, but the girl's eyes held desperation, the kind that comes from many nights without warmth, without bread, without safety. He stepped aside and whispered, "Come in before you freeze to death." They entered slowly, their bare feet leaving wet prints on the wooden floor. The smaller one, hardly more than 6 or 7 years old, almost collapsed near the fire. Daniel quickly brought a blanket and wrapped it around her shivering body. He stirred the stew, filled 2 bowls, and placed them in front of them. For a moment, the girls only stared at the food, as if afraid it might disappear. Then they ate, not with greed, but with tears running down their faces. Every bite looked painful, as if their bodies had forgotten how to eat. Daniel sat quietly, watching them. He could not ignore the memory of his own childhood, when he too had known hunger after the war. He remembered a kind old woman who had given him bread when he was a boy. That bread had tasted better than anything in the universe. Now, looking at these girls, he felt the same weight of choice. The taller one finally lifted her eyes. Why? Why help us? Others chase us away. They say we are useless mouths. Daniel poked at the fire, staring at the sparks. Because someone should. Because you deserve better than to die outside in the snow. The girls looked at him in silence, as if his words were something strange, something they had never heard before. The younger one leaned against him shyly, her head resting on his arm. Her small body was so light it felt like carrying air. He pulled the blanket tighter around her. Hours passed. The storm outside grew harsher, but inside the cabin, the fire burned warm and steady. The girls fell asleep on the rug, faces peaceful for the first time. Daniel sat in his chair, staring at them. He knew trouble would come. Alien patrols moved through the colony often, searching for strays. Harboring them was dangerous. Yet, looking at their fragile sleeping forms, he knew there was no choice left. They had knocked on his door, and now they were his responsibility. As he closed his eyes, he felt the weight of what had just happened. It was a simple meal, only stew and bread, but to the girls it had been life itself. They would remember this night. Maybe it would mean nothing in the wide, cruel galaxy. Or maybe, years from now, the echo of this kindness would return in ways he could never imagine. Daniel leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, because someone should, one last time. Then he drifted into uneasy sleep, not knowing that this one small act of compassion would change not only his life, but the fate of stars yet unseen. Morning light entered the small cabin, falling across the wooden floor where the 2 girls were still sleeping close to each other. Daniel stirred the fire back to life and placed a pot of water to boil. The smell of warmth filled the air again, and soon the girls opened their tired eyes. They looked around, confused, as if not sure whether last night had been a dream. When Daniel gave them another piece of bread, they ate more slowly, no longer in panic, but still careful, like they feared it could be their last meal. After they had eaten, Daniel asked softly, "What are your names?" The taller girl lifted her chin. "I'm Lyra. She is my sister, Sina." She placed her hand protectively on the smaller one's shoulder. "We ran from the fire. Soldiers came. They burned our home." Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. "Mother told us to run. We never saw her again." Daniel listened, his heart heavy. He had seen soldiers before, the alien enforcers who kept humans and weak races in fear. He knew their cruelty well. He looked at the sisters, two children with no one left in the galaxy. He could not send them away. Senna tugged at his sleeve timidly. Do we stay? Just for a little? Daniel knelt down so his eyes met hers. You can stay, as long as you need. I don't have much, but you'll never starve while you're here. Lyra's lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears. Why would you do this? If the patrols find out, they'll punish you. They don't let humans keep strays. Daniel put his hand on her shoulder. Because no one else will. You're safe here. The days that followed were quiet but full of fear. Daniel taught the girls how to plant seeds in the frozen soil, how to cut wood for the fire, how to boil stew without wasting anything. Lyra worked hard, copying every move Daniel made, while Sina often tripped and laughed, her innocence shining through the shadows of her past. For the first time since their home was destroyed, they felt a sense of family again. But outside the cabin, whispers started. Neighbors had sharp eyes, and Daniel knew some had seen movement through his window. One man asked him at the market, "Who are you hiding, farmer? We all know you're too poor to feed more mouths. Yet you buy extra bread." His tone was accusing, sharp like a knife. Daniel only shrugged, keeping his face calm, though inside his chest fear twisted tight. That night, he warned the girls, "If someone comes, you hide under the floor. Don't make a sound. Promise me." Lyra nodded firmly, while Sena clung to him, scared. The fear became real 2 nights later. Boots crunched outside on the frozen ground. The sound of metal armor rattled closer. Daniel's heart raced as the door burst open, and alien guards filled the cabin with their tall, shadowed figures. Their glowing eyes scanned every corner. "You," the captain sneered, grabbing Daniel by the collar. "We hear rumors you shelter strays. Where are they?" Daniel forced his face to remain blank. "Only me here, just an old farmer with nothing." The guard shoved him hard against the wall, searching the room. Daniel's mind screamed with terror, hoping the girls stayed hidden beneath the loose boards. One guard kicked the bed, another checked the firewood stack. For long minutes, the cabin was chaos, boots and weapons everywhere. Finally, the captain spat on the floor. "If we find you lying again human, it won't just be your bones broken. You'll be dragged through the streets as an example." He slammed Daniel back down and ordered his men out. The cabin door banged shut, leaving only silence and Daniel's heavy breathing. When he lifted the board from the floor, Lyra and Senna crawled out, their faces pale and wet with tears. Senna buried her face into his chest, shaking. Lyra clenched her fists. "They'll keep coming. We should go. We can't bring this on you." Daniel knelt, holding both of them close. "No, you're my responsibility now. I won't let them take you." Lyra's voice cracked as she argued. "One day this will cost you more than broken bones. They'll kill you, Daniel. Why take that risk?" His answer was simple but firm. "Because you're worth it. Because if I don't protect you, who will?" The girls went quiet, tears sliding down their cheeks. Finally, Lyra pressed her forehead against his shoulder and whispered, "Then promise us, if something happens to you, we must live. We'll survive. We'll come back for you one day." Daniel looked at both of them, at their fragile faces lit by the fire. "Promise me that. Live, whatever it takes." They nodded, whispering together like a vow. "We'll come back. We'll return to you." The storm howled outside. The fire burned low. But in that small cabin, 3 lives had bound themselves together. They did not know how much danger was still coming, but the promise they made that night would echo far beyond the ruined colony. Daniel sat awake long after the girls fell asleep, staring into the fire. He could not see the future, but deep inside he felt it. Something had changed forever. Snow covered the ground outside, shining pale under the moonlight when heavy boots returned. Daniel had just put the girls to sleep when the sound of marching filled his ears. He felt his chest tighten. He whispered to Lyra and Sina, "Hide! Now!" The girls obeyed quickly, crawling into the space beneath the wooden floor, clutching each other as the loose boards closed over them. Daniel stood alone, waiting, his fists clenched. The door slammed open with force. 4 alien guards entered, their armor glinting, their sharp weapons ready. The captain from before stepped forward, his face cold. "We warned you, human, and still we hear whispers. Where are the strays?" Daniel said nothing, his eyes steady. Silence made the captain's anger grow. He grabbed Daniel by the shirt and slammed him against the wall. The breath left Daniel's lungs as pain rushed through his ribs. "Do you think you can hide them from us?" the captain hissed. Daniel forced his voice out, rough but firm. "I live alone. There is no one here." The guards began tearing through the cabin. Pots clattered, shelves fell, the bed was flipped, and firewood scattered across the floor. Every crash made the girls under the boards shake with fear. Daniel's heart beat hard in his chest, but his face showed no weakness. He stood tall, even when one of the guards struck him across the jaw. The captain's fist landed again, harder this time, splitting Daniel's lip. Blood dripped down, warm and metallic. Still, he refused to speak. The guards dragged him to the floor, kicking his stomach, breaking his breath into gasps, yet not once did he give the sisters away. Lyra's small hand clamped over Sena's mouth to silence her sobs. She trembled, her nails digging into the wood, wanting to scream, wanting to run out and help, but knowing it would doom them all. Daniel's voice broke through the beating, ragged but strong. "If you're done wasting time, leave my house." The captain stared at him, his glowing eyes full of cruelty. He raised his hand for another strike, but paused. Perhaps he enjoyed the thought of breaking this stubborn human slowly. He leaned closer, his breath sour. "One day, human, this will cost you more than broken bones. Next time, we won't stop until you're nothing." With that, he ordered his men out. The cabin door slammed shut, leaving Daniel broken on the floor, bruises already spreading across his face and ribs. Silence filled the room again, broken only by his heavy breathing. Slowly, with shaky hands, he lifted the boards. The girls crawled out, their eyes wide with tears. Sena threw herself at him, clinging to his chest, sobbing into his torn shirt. Lyra stood still, her fists clenched so tight her nails cut into her palms. "You should have let us go," she whispered, her voice trembling with both anger and fear. "Why would you suffer for us?" Daniel wiped the blood from his mouth, forcing a weak smile. "Because you are mine to protect now. No matter what they do, I won't give you up." Sena cried harder, clutching him tighter. "But they'll kill you." Daniel looked at both of them, his eyes steady, though his body ached. "If I die, you must promise me something. You live. Don't throw away your lives for me. Survive, no matter what. That's how you can honor me." The fire crackled softly, casting shadows over the three of them. Lyra's voice broke as she answered, "We won't forget this. One day, we'll come back for you. We'll return. That's our vow." Daniel's rough hands rested gently on their heads. "Then that's enough." That night, they patched his wounds with cloth and herbs. His body hurt with every breath, but the warmth in their eyes gave him strength. He lay back, staring at the roof while the sisters whispered to each other by the fire. He could hear Sena's small voice say, "He's our family now." The promise echoed in the room, stronger than the fear outside. Daniel knew the patrols would return again. He knew this life of hiding could not last forever. But he also knew something more powerful had been created in that cabin. Trust, bound by blood, by suffering, by choice. The girls stayed close to him that night, refusing to sleep apart. The storm outside raged, but inside, their bond grew unshakable. As Daniel drifted into uneasy rest, he could still hear their vow in the back of his mind, like a seed planted deep in the soil of fate. They would remember, they would return, and one day, that promise would change everything. Years passed slowly, each day folding into the next like pages of a book with the same story written again and again. Daniel worked the soil, repaired his fences, and fed his animals, living the life of a lonely farmer at the edge of a forgotten colony. The cabin that once held the laughter of two orphan girls now stood silent. Every night, when the fire burned low, his eyes would drift to the empty rug where Lyra and Sena had once slept. He could still see them in his mind. Sena's soft giggles, Lyra's sharp questions, the way they clung to him when the wind howled outside. But now there was only the sound of the crackling fire and the steady rhythm of his own breathing. The girls had left many years ago. Daniel had known it would happen. They were too young to live their lives hiding in shadows forever. The patrols had become more watchful, and whispers of raids spread across the colony. Lyra had insisted they leave before his protection cost him his life. He had resisted, begged them to stay, but he saw the determination in their eyes. They promised him with trembling voices that they would return one day. Then they were gone. He often wondered what became of them. Sometimes he imagined them living in another colony, maybe adopted by kind strangers, maybe working in markets, maybe forgotten by the galaxy. Other nights, darker thoughts came. Images of patrols catching them, soldiers dragging them away. On those nights, Daniel would sit awake until morning, staring at the door as if still waiting for them to knock. Years blurred into a decade. His hair grew streaks of gray, his back bent lower with work, and the scars from that night with the guards never truly healed. Yet even with the weight of time pressing on him, a small hope always lived quietly in his chest. It was a stubborn hope, the kind that refuses to die no matter how many times it is told to give up. News traveled slowly in the ruined colony, carried by traders and drifters who stopped for a drink or a meal. Daniel sometimes listened as they spoke of the galaxy beyond. He heard tales of a pair of young alien commanders who had risen like fire through the royal fleet. Two sisters, brilliant and fearless, who fought battles with skill beyond their years. Some said they had never lost a fight. Others whispered that entire fleets bent their knees to them, fearing their wrath. The people called them the Twin Blades. Daniel would sit quietly in the corner whenever such stories were told. He never spoke of the girls he once fed, but deep inside he felt something stir. He wondered if the rumors were connected, if perhaps fate had carried Lyra and Sina far higher than he could ever imagine. But the thought was always chased by doubt. Could those little orphans who once clung to his sleeve truly be these powerful commanders of war? Could children who once cried themselves to sleep become legends? One cold night, the colony tavern buzzed with fresh news. A merchant, flushed with drink, shouted, "The twin commanders just broke the blockade at Veyron Prime. They say the sisters fight side by side, never leaving each other's shadow. Together, they're unstoppable." The crowd cheered at the drama of the tale, but Daniel only sat quietly, staring into his cup. His mind wandered back to the cabin fire, to two frightened girls whispering, "We'll come back for you." Still, he said nothing. Hope was dangerous. He had learned long ago that hope could break a man worse than any blade. He told himself it was only coincidence, a story meant to entertain. He returned to his cabin, sat before his fire, and whispered into the silence, "I hope you're alive." His voice cracked as he said it, but no one was there to hear. The seasons kept turning. Daniel worked as he always did, his body slower now, his hands stiff from years of labor. The loneliness pressed harder as the winters grew colder. Sometimes he thought about leaving the colony, searching the stars himself, but he knew he was too old, too poor, too bound to the soil. His world was this cabin, this farm, this silence. But fate does not need permission to change a man's life. One night, a storm rolled across the colony. The wind howled, lightning split the sky, and rain lashed against the wooden walls of the cabin. Daniel lit his lamps, but the power flickered and died, plunging the room into shadows. He sat near the fire, pulling his coat tight, listening to the storm batter the land. Then, through the sound of thunder, another noise came. A deep hum, low at first, then growing louder until the walls of the cabin shook. Daniel frowned, standing slowly, his old bones stiff. He stepped to the window and saw a light in the distance, bright and unnatural, cutting through the storm clouds. The ground trembled. The hum grew sharper, filling his chest with vibrations. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as the light moved closer, descending toward his farm. It was not lightning. It was not thunder. It was something far greater. He stumbled to the door and opened it. The storm hit his face, cold and sharp, but his eyes stayed fixed on the sky. Above the trees, a massive shape lowered through the rain. Sleek metal gleamed in flashes of lightning, brighter and more beautiful than anything he had ever seen. The hum became a roar as the shape resolved into a ship, large, luxurious, nothing like the war machines he had seen before. Its lights cut through the storm like blades, shining straight onto his cabin. Daniel's heart pounded as the earth shook beneath his feet. He stepped out into the rain, staring upward with disbelief. For years he had lived in silence, in waiting. And now, in the middle of the storm, something impossible was landing at his very door. He whispered into the night, not knowing if anyone could hear. "What is this?" The ship descended lower, its engines shaking the very soil of his farm. Daniel shielded his eyes against the glow, his breath short, his body trembling. Somewhere deep inside him, That small, stubborn hope sparked alive again, brighter than ever before. He did not yet know who had come, but in his heart he felt it. The past was no longer silent. Something was returning to him, something he had never truly lost. The ground shook as the massive ship settled down, its engines blasting wind across Daniel's farm. Dust, rain, and broken leaves swirled around him while he stood frozen in the storm, staring at the shining monster of metal now crouched on his land. The old wooden fences cracked under the force, and the animals in the barn cried out in panic. Daniel's heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. He had seen patrol ships before, cruel machines carrying soldiers who brought pain. But this was different. This ship gleamed with power, with wealth, with authority. It was not a patrol craft. It was a luxury vessel built for leaders and rulers. The roar of the engines faded, leaving behind only the howl of the storm. A ramp extended slowly from the belly of the ship, slamming into the wet ground. Bright lights spilled out, cutting through the darkness. Daniel lifted his shotgun, his hands shaking. He had no idea who would step out, no idea why such a ship would land here on his broken little farm. Two figures appeared at the top of the ramp, their silhouettes tall and sharp against the glow behind them. They wore shining armor, cloaks whipping in the wind, and they walked with the kind of confidence only seen in warriors who had nothing left to fear. Their helmets covered their faces, glowing red eyes burning like fire in the shadows. Step by step, they descended the ramp, the mud hissing under their boots as rain splashed against their polished plates. Daniel's finger twitched on the trigger. His voice came out rough, broken by age and fear. "Who are you? What do you want here?" The figures stopped at the bottom of the ramp. For a moment, silence stretched between them, broken only by thunder. Then, slowly, one of them reached up. With a soft hiss, the helmet unlocked and lifted away. Daniel's world froze. Beneath the metal was a face he knew, though it was no longer the same as the one in his memory. Her eyes were sharper, her jaw stronger, her expression filled with the weight of command. Yet behind all of that, Daniel saw the same child who once clung to him by the fire, the girl who had whispered her promise to return. "Papa," she said softly. Her voice cracked, heavy with emotion. The second figure lifted her helmet too. The younger face appeared, her cheeks streaked with rain and tears. Her lips trembled as she whispered the same word. "Papa." Daniel staggered back, the shotgun slipping from his hands and falling into the mud. His knees felt weak, his chest tight. He blinked hard, not trusting his eyes. "Lyra? Sena?" His voice broke as he spoke their names. They both nodded, tears now streaming freely down their faces. Sena took a step forward, almost stumbling in her rush. "We never forgot you. We swore, didn't we? We swore we'd come back." Daniel shook his head slowly, still in disbelief. The last time he had seen them, they were small, fragile, barely able to survive. Now they stood before him as powerful commanders, armored and strong, carrying themselves like legends. His mind could not bridge the gap between the children he had hidden under floorboards and the warriors who now knelt before him in the storm. Lyra dropped to her knees in the mud, not caring about the dirt on her armor. Sena followed, bowing her head. Together they lifted their hands toward him. "We came back. We told you we would." Daniel felt hot tears blur his vision. His throat tightened, and for a long moment he could not speak. He stepped forward, his shaking hands reaching out to touch their faces. His fingers brushed Sena's cheek, then Lyra's. They were real, warm, alive. He fell to his knees with them, pulling both into his arms. The three of them clung together as the storm raged around them. Rain washed down their faces, mixing with tears. Daniel's voice finally broke free, rough and filled with years of pain and love. "You came back. You really came back." Lyra's hand gripped his tightly. "We never forgot the night you saved us. We never forgot the fire, the bread, the way you told us we mattered. When the galaxy turned its back, you didn't." Sena sobbed against his chest. "Every victory we had, every step we took, it was because of you. You gave us life when no one else cared." Daniel held them closer, his heart full and aching at the same time. The storm seemed to fade, the sound of thunder distant now compared to the sound of their voices. He had lived in silence for 10 long years, waiting, doubting, hurting. Now that silence was broken, replaced by the voices he had missed every night. The sisters pulled back slightly, their eyes fierce with emotion. "You are not just a farmer," Lyra said. To us, you are everything, and we are here to give back what you gave us." Daniel stared at them, his mind still spinning, but his heart beginning to understand. He saw it in their eyes, in the strength of their stance, in the power of their voices. These were no longer the frightened children who had knocked on his door begging for food. These were women who carried fire in their blood, women who commanded ships, who bent soldiers to their will. Yet despite all that, they were still his girls. He whispered again, half to himself, half to them, "My girls." Senna laughed through her tears, nodding. "Always." Above them, the great ship loomed, its lights glowing brighter as if the galaxy itself had come to witness the reunion. Daniel felt the weight of years lifting from his shoulders. He did not know why fate had chosen him, a poor farmer at the edge of nowhere, to be part of this story. But as he held Lyra and Senna close, he understood one thing. A single act of kindness had rippled outward, across time and space, and returned to him in ways beyond imagination. The rain poured, the mud clung to their clothes, but in that moment, Daniel felt richer than kings. He had his family again, and the promise made so long ago had finally been kept. Daniel stepped into the ship, guided by Lyra and Senna on either side. The moment his worn boots touched the shining floor, he felt out of place. The walls glowed softly with silver light, smooth metal without cracks or rust. The air was warm, clean, and sweet, nothing like the heavy smoke and dust of his farm. Everything inside looked rich and powerful, built for rulers, not for a poor farmer. Daniel's calloused hands brushed against the walls as if he needed to prove they were real. Senna laughed lightly at his wonder, holding his arm as though she was still the small girl who once leaned on him for comfort. "This is yours too now," she said. "You gave us everything once. Now it's our turn." Lyra's voice was stronger, full of command, but her eyes softened when she looked at him. "You are under our protection. No one in the galaxy will ever harm you again." They would not dare. Daniel shook his head slowly, still in disbelief. "I'm just a farmer. I don't belong in a place like this." Senna squeezed his hand. "To us, you're more than any commander, more than any king. You are the reason we live." They led him deeper into the ship, showing him rooms filled with luxuries he never imagined, beds softer than clouds, food machines that could make any dish in seconds, windows that stretched across entire walls to reveal the stars outside. Daniel stood before one of the windows, staring into the endless black, lit with thousands of burning lights. For a long time, he said nothing. His reflection looked back at him, a tired man with gray hair and lines carved into his face. Beside him stood the sisters, strong, tall, and shining in armor. He felt a mix of pride and fear. "You changed," he whispered finally. "The children I knew are gone. Now you are leaders, warriors. The galaxy knows your names." Lyra stepped closer, placing her hand on his shoulder. "The children you saved are still here. We are just stronger now. We carry your lessons with us." Senna smiled softly. "You told us to live. We did. And every step we took, we thought of you." Daniel's eyes grew wet. He wanted to believe, but a shadow of fear still lingered. He remembered the patrol guards, the way they had beaten him, the way they had promised that one day his choice to protect the girls would destroy him. Those words had lived in his head for 10 years. He turned from the window and whispered, "But they will come for me. If your enemies learn who I am, they will use me against you." The sisters exchanged a glance, their eyes dark with certainty. Lyra's voice was iron. "Then let them try. We are not the weak girls who hid under your floor. We are commanders now. We command fleets. Anyone who dares touch you will answer to us." Senna added, her voice trembling with emotion. "We already lost our parents once. We will not lose you. Not again." Daniel looked at them, his heart torn between fear and pride. Part of him wanted to beg them to hide him, to keep his name secret. But another part swelled with pride at their strength, at the fire in their eyes. He had always told them they must survive no matter what. And they had. They had survived, and more than that, they had risen. The ship hummed softly, alive with power, carrying them through the storm and into the sky. Daniel pressed his hand against the glass as the colony grew smaller below. His farm, his cabin, the place where everything had started, it shrank into nothing as they left the atmosphere. His chest tightened. That life was behind him now. Ahead lay only stars. Later, they sat together in a great hall, a table spread with food so rich Daniel hardly dared touch it. Roasted meats, glowing fruits, and steaming drinks filled the air with fragrance. Sina piled a plate for him, laughing at his hesitation. Eat, Papa. You starved yourself for us once. Now you'll never starve again. Daniel took a bite, the taste almost too much for his tongue to understand. He chewed slowly, remembering the thin bread and weak stew he had once shared with the girls. He remembered how their eyes had lit with gratitude. Now, 10 years later, those same eyes looked at him across a grand table, full of love and strength. For a brief moment, happiness filled him completely. But then the alarm sounded. A deep red light washed across the walls, and the ship's calm hum turned sharp and urgent. Lyra and Sina rose at once, their expressions changing from warmth to steel. Daniel stood too, fear rising in his chest. What is it? Lyra's hand went to her weapon. Enemies. They followed us. Sina turned to Daniel, her face pale but determined. This is what we feared. They know you're with us now. They'll try to use you against us. Daniel's breath caught. The promise of the captain from years ago echoed in his ears. One day this will cost you more than broken bones. His past had returned to claim him. The sisters drew close, their armor glinting under the red lights. Lyra spoke quickly, her voice low and fierce. Stay behind us. Whatever happens, do not let go of us. Santa grabbed his hand. We protected you as children. Now it's our turn to shield you. Daniel's chest swelled with both fear and pride. He looked at them, these women who had once been small orphans begging for bread. Now they were warriors standing between him and the storm. His voice trembled, but his heart was steady. Then let me stand with you. I won't hide while you fight for me. The ship shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. Outside, through the grand window, Daniel saw dark shapes emerging from the stars, ships with weapons glowing, moving in tight formation. The enemy had come, and they had come for him. The sisters lifted their heads, eyes burning with fury. Let them try, Lyra whispered. They don't know who they're facing. The sound of engines roared as the ship prepared for battle. Daniel stood between the two girls he once saved, now grown into legends, and for the first time he realized the truth. His small act of kindness had not just saved 2 lives. It had created a force the galaxy itself would learn to fear. The ship shook as enemy fire slammed against its shields, red light flashing across the walls. Sirens screamed through the halls, and soldiers in armor rushed past, ready to fight. Daniel stood in the middle of the chaos, his heart pounding like a drum. He had seen battles before from far away, but never from inside a warship. His old hands clenched tightly, but his eyes stayed fixed on Lyra and Sina as they moved with calm fury, giving orders to their crew. Raise shields to maximum, Lyra shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. Return fire at their lead ship. Sina pointed at the tactical screen. Enemy vessels are forming a trap. Don't let them circle us. Push forward. Make them break formation. Their soldiers obeyed without hesitation, their respect clear in every movement. Daniel watched in silence, his chest full of pride and fear. These were the same girls who once hid beneath his floorboards, trembling in the dark. Now they commanded fleets, their words carrying the weight of authority. Yet, even in the middle of battle, their eyes flicked to him, making sure he was safe. The ship rocked again as enemy blasts tore against the shields. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Daniel stumbled, falling against a console. A young crew member helped him stand, but Daniel's eyes caught something on the screen. An enemy boarding craft breaking through, heading straight for their ship's docking bay. They're coming inside, Daniel whispered, dread filling him. Lyra heard him and turned sharply. Seal the inner corridors. Don't let them reach him. But it was too late. The sound of metal tearing screamed through the ship as the boarding craft locked on. Doors buckled, alarms blared louder. Enemy soldiers poured inside, their weapons glowing. Daniel's breath froze in his chest. Memories flooded him, of patrol guards breaking into his cabin, of fists and threats, of hiding the girls beneath the floor. It was the same fear, but now it was multiplied by 100. Yet before the panic could consume him, Lyra and Senna stepped in front of him, weapons drawn, their cloaks flaring behind them like wings. No one touches him, Sina growled. The first wave of enemies charged. Blades clashed, plasma bolts lit the air, and the sisters moved like storms. Lyra cut down attackers with precise, brutal strikes, while Sena fought with fierce speed, every move fueled by fire in her heart. Daniel stood behind them, gripping a fallen enemy's staff for support. But then he heard it, a cry. In the chaos of battle, one of the enemy soldiers grabbed a small alien child from the refugee group the sisters had been transporting. The child screamed, struggling in the soldier's grip. Without thinking, Daniel moved. His old legs carried him forward faster than he thought possible. He shoved the staff hard into the soldier's side, breaking his hold. The child fell free, crawling away. The soldier turned on Daniel with rage in his eyes, raising his blade. Daniel froze, certain his life was about to end. But before the strike could fall, Lyra's sword cut through the soldier in a single blazing arc. She turned, her face pale, her eyes wide. "Papa!" Santa rushed to him, holding his arm. "Are you hurt?" Daniel shook his head, breathless, his heart pounding. "I'm fine. Just doing what I did before, protecting a child." For a moment, both sisters stopped, staring at him with tears burning in their eyes, even as the battle raged. In that single action, they were thrown back to the memory of their childhood, to the night he had shielded them from the guards with his own body. The circle had closed. The same man who once gave them bread and warmth was still here, still standing, still protecting. The sisters fought harder after that, rage blazing in their every strike. The enemy soldiers began to falter under their fury. With one last coordinated assault, the sisters forced the invaders back into their boarding craft. The ship's cannons roared, and the enemy vessels shattered under the combined fire of the fleet. Silence finally fell, broken only by the crackle of damaged consoles and the heavy breathing of exhausted warriors. The crew cheered, voices echoing through the halls. "Victory! Victory for the twin commanders!" Lyra lowered her sword, turning to Daniel. Her armor was cracked, her face streaked with sweat and blood, but her eyes glowed with fire. She dropped to her knees before him. "We told you once we would return, and now we tell you again. Whoever touches you, touches us." Sina knelt beside her, gripping his hand tightly. "You saved us with nothing but a meal and kindness. You gave us a reason to live. Today, we gave everything back. You are not just our father. You are the reason the galaxy has us at all." Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at the two women kneeling before him, surrounded by soldiers who treated them like gods. Yet, to him, they were still the small girls who had eaten his stew by the fire. His eyes filled with tears as he whispered, "I only gave you a little food, nothing more." Lyra shook her head firmly. "No, you gave us life, and life is worth more than fleets, more than crowns, more than all the stars." The crew around them lowered their weapons, watching silently as the sisters bowed to the old farmer. Even hardened warriors wiped their eyes. It was not just a reunion. It was the truth of what kindness could build. Later, when the fires were out and the stars stretched wide before them, Daniel stood on the viewing deck with Lyra and Sena at his sides. The galaxy glittered like jewels across the black. His farm, his cabin, the silence of 10 lonely years, all of it felt far behind him now. Sena leaned her head on his shoulder. "From now on, you'll never be alone again." Lyra's voice was steady, like a vow. 10 years ago, you gave us food. Today, we give you the galaxy." Daniel looked at them, his heart full, and for the first time in many years, he smiled without pain. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and in them he saw the truth. A single act of kindness had changed the fate of not just 2 children, but the course of empires. And as long as the sisters stood beside him, he knew one thing. His legacy would live forever, written across the stars themselves.